Tonight, we journey into the heart of that world and far beyond it to explore the epic story of the Mongol Empire. This is not just a tale of conquest and war, though it is that too. It is a story of unexpected beginnings, of a boy named Temüjin rising from poverty and exile to unite a fractured people. It is a story of horses and wind, arrows and empire, cities burned and cities built, of silk roads that stretch like veins across the world and ideas that flow with merchants and monks alike. The Mongol Empire, at its height in the 13th and 14th centuries, became the largest contiguous land empire in history. Spanning from the Sea of Japan to the Danube River, it connected nearly half of the known world under a single administration. And yet, it began in a place that most would have overlooked among nomads, yurts, and herders on the harsh Mongolian plateau. In this sleep-learning journey, we'll move gently through time from the early centuries of steppe life before Genghis Khan to the consolidation of Mongol tribes, the whirlwind of expansion, and the unlikely creation of what historians sometimes call the Pax Mongolica, a peace forged by horsemen who once knew only war. We will meet not only warriors and khans, but also traders, scribes, map-makers, and monks who traveled through this interconnected world. We'll imagine the details of everyday life, the smell of felt tents warmed by fire, the hooves pounding over frozen ground, the silk robes of Persian emissaries, and the silent rows of terracotta stored in Chinese palaces. Each chapter will close like a curtain drawing gently over a campfire, helping you drift further into sleep, while absorbing the intricate, fascinating history of the Mongol Empire. So now, let us begin from the quiet of the steppes, before the rise of empires. Let your eyes grow heavier as we return to the world before Genghis, far before the rise of Genghis Khan. The Central Asian steppe had long been home to nomadic peoples groups, bound not by walls or cities, but by kinship, movement, and survival. The steppe is a world shaped by movement. There are no mountains to stop you, few forests to enclose you. Instead, there are miles upon miles of open plains, carpeted in grasses that feed horses, sheep, and goats. For the people who lived here, the Mongols, the Tatars, the Naimans, and the Merkits' life was not about permanence, but about flow. Nomadic societies have their own rhythms. Clans move with the seasons, shifting from summer pastures to winter shelters. They live in jurs, which you might know as yurts round, collapsible tents made of felt and wood. The interior of a jir is both symbolic and functional. The hearth in the center, the man's tools to the left, the woman's to the right, and sacred objects near the door. In this world, horses were not a luxury, they were essential. From the moment they could walk, Mongol children learned to ride. A boy might be placed on a horse by the time he could stand. Herding, hunting, and warfare all required mastery of the saddle. These horses were small, sturdy, and immensely tough, able to gallop across icy plains or drink from frozen streams. Society was organized through kinship. Extended families formed clans, and clans formed tribes, each led by a khan, a chieftain, who was both war leader and judge. But authority was fragile. A khan ruled only so long as he could maintain loyalty, strength, and the blessings of the sky gods. This belief in divine sky power was central to early Mongol spirituality. The supreme deity was Tengri, the eternal blue sky. Beneath him was Etugen, the Earth Mother. Shamans, spiritual mediators, interpreted signs, guided rituals, and protected their people from misfortune or curse. The Mongols were far from isolated. To the south lay the powerful Yuan Dynasty of northern China. To the west, the Islamic Khwarezmian Empire stretched across Persia and Central Asia. The Kara Khitan, a remnant of the Liao Dynasty, governed parts of Central Asia. And scattered among the steppes were other tribes, Turkic, Uyghur, and more. Trade caravans occasionally made their way through the grasslands, but so did raiding parties. Alliances were constantly made and broken. A marriage between clans could secure peace for a year or start a blood feud lasting a generation. Into this chaotic, flexible but fragile world, in the year 1162, a boy was born near the banks of the Onon River. His name was Temüjin. His father was a minor chieftain named Yesuge, and his mother Hoelun was stolen from another tribe. Already, his story began with blood and survival. Temüjin's early years were hard. His father was poisoned by rivals when he was just 9 years old. His family, now led by his mother, was cast out of their tribe. They survived on wild roots and fishing. Temüjin hunted small animals and learned to fight for scraps. But what emerged from that exile was something powerful. Temüjin began to form alliances of his own. He would remember loyalty and betrayal with precision. He would also develop a fierce belief that leadership should be earned, not inherited. In a world where bloodlines ruled, this was revolutionary. As we close this chapter and settle into deeper stillness, imagine the quiet rustling of grass beneath hooves. Imagine fires flickering in the black night of the steppe, and a young boy staring into the stars, a boy who would become Genghis Khan. The steppe shapes its people in silence, not through books or schools, but through wind, fire, hunger, and survival. And it was in that silent schooling that Temüjin, son of a fallen chieftain, began to rise. His early life is filled with uncertainty. Records are sparse and often shaped by myth. But what remains clear is that Temüjin was no ordinary child. Even in exile, his will was strong. He showed not only courage, but also remarkable skill in forming alliances bonds not just through blood, but through shared purpose. One of his most significant relationships was with a young man named Jamuka, a childhood friend and blood brother. Mongols called this bond anda, a relationship deeper than friendship, almost sacred. At first, the two were close allies, but their destinies would diverge in time. In his early 20s, Temüjin began gathering loyal followers. These were not just members of his own tribe. He welcomed outcasts, orphans, and men of talent from rival clans. What set him apart was this idea that loyalty and merit could matter more than noble birth. In a rigid tribal society, this was radical. He also began to implement reforms in military structure. Traditionally, tribal armies were organized by clan and kin. Temüjin reorganized his warriors into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, called Arban, Zun, Mingan, and Tumen. These units cut across family lines. A soldier's loyalty now lay with his unit and with Temüjin himself. This merit-based system gave him a powerful edge. He punished betrayal swiftly and rewarded loyalty generously. He created a system of yam, a kind of relay post network for messages and supplies long before his empire stretched beyond Mongolia. As his power grew, so did resistance. In the late 1180s, a rivalry with his former friend Jamuka turned violent. Temüjin's supporters favored his ideas of equality and loyalty. Jamuka, born of higher status, represented the old ways aristocratic and tribal. In 1187, the two clashed in open battle. Temüjin was defeated, and Jamuka horrifically executed 70 of his captains by boiling them alive. But even in loss, Temüjin's reputation grew. He was not a man easily broken. Over the next decade, Temüjin rebuilt. He secured alliances with powerful tribes like the Karaite and the Uyghurs, marrying his sons and daughters into their families. He gained support from Kublai Khan, a Karaite leader who acted as a father figure, though that alliance would also later dissolve into betrayal. In 1201, Jamuka attempted to reassert dominance, forming a coalition of tribes to declare himself Gurkhan, universal ruler. But Temüjin's military skill and organizational genius overcame the odds. By 1206, after years of war, betrayal, and strategy, Temüjin stood victorious. That year, the Mongol tribes gathered at the Onon River in a great council known as a Kurultai. Here, Temüjin was given a new title, Genghis Khan, or Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. This was not just a political moment. It was spiritual and symbolic. The fractured clans of the steppe were now one nation, the Mongol nation, under a single leader. Genghis Khan immediately began implementing sweeping laws, known collectively as the yasa. Though the exact contents are lost to time, we know they emphasized discipline, loyalty, and justice. Theft and betrayal were punished harshly. Religious freedom was guaranteed, and the empire would be run with a level of pragmatism rarely seen. The stage was now set. A man once left to starve in the wilderness had become master of the Mongol tribes. But Genghis Khan was not content to rule only the steppe. As your breathing deepens, imagine the silence of a vast camp under moonlight, thousands of yurts spread across the plains, the banners of Genghis Khan fluttering like whispers of destiny. Tomorrow, they will ride. But tonight, the fire crackles gently, and the world is still. From the moment Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes in 1206, his ambitions outgrew the steppes. The wind no longer whispered only across the grasses of Mongolia, it began to echo along the Great Wall, across deserts, over rivers, and through empires. The Mongol military was unlike anything the world had seen. Their cavalry was swift and silent, made up mostly of light horse archers who could shoot with deadly accuracy while riding at full speed. They could travel up to 100 miles in a day, surviving on dried meat, fermented mare's milk, and even horse blood when needed. Discipline was absolute. Orders were followed without question. If a soldier fled, 10 would be punished. And so, in 1209, Genghis Khan launched his first major foreign campaign against the Western Xia kingdom in northwestern China. The Xia were a sedentary people with walled cities and a structured bureaucracy, but they were no match for Mongol speed and strategy. After a series of battles, the Xia submitted, though they would later defy him again. This campaign taught Genghis a lesson. Cities required different tactics, so he recruited experts. Engineers, siege specialists, even former enemies, he welcomed them if they could serve the empire. This practice became a Mongol hallmark, absorbing talent wherever it was found. By 1211, his attention turned to the Yuan Dynasty, a powerful empire ruling northern China. Their population dwarfed that of Mongolia, and their fortifications were strong. But the Mongols were relentless. Instead of direct confrontation, they launched feint attacks, spread terror in the countryside, and cut off supplies. They bypassed the Great Wall, using mountain passes, and bribed local officials to open gates. Slowly, city after city fell. By 1215, the Mongols reached the Jin capital of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing. After a long siege, the city fell. The capital was burned, and many perished. Genghis Khan did not seek destruction for its own sake, but he believed terror could ensure obedience. And so, when cities resisted, they were often destroyed. But those who surrendered were spared and even rewarded. With northern China subdued, Genghis Khan looked westward. His scouts brought back stories of rich cities, vast empires, and silk routes stretching across Central Asia. In 1218, an event occurred that changed history. Genghis Khan had sent a caravan of Muslim merchants to the Khwarezmian Empire, a wealthy state across the desert of Transoxiana in modern-day Iran and Uzbekistan. The governor of Otrar, suspecting the caravan of espionage, had the merchants killed. Genghis Khan responded by sending envoys to demand justice. But the Shah of Khwarezm, Ala ad-Din Muhammad, went further. He executed the envoys. In Mongol culture, the murder of an envoy was the gravest insult. Genghis Khan, enraged, prepared for war. In 1219, the Mongol army crossed into Khwarezmian lands. They moved like a storm, splitting into multiple columns, striking from unexpected directions, and laying siege to great cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urgench. The Mongols used Chinese siege engineers, psychological warfare, and a mastery of timing. At Bukhara, Genghis Khan reportedly addressed the citizens in the mosque saying, "I am the punishment of God. Had you not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me." Though apocryphal, the quote reflects the scale of destruction. Yet, many cities that surrendered were incorporated into the empire, their artisans spared and resettled. The Khwarezmian Shah fled west, pursued across deserts until his death. Genghis Khan then sent a reconnaissance force of about 20,000 men further west under generals Subutai and Jebi. This was not a full invasion, but a test. This Mongol detachment fought its way across the Caucasus, through Georgia, into the Russ's lands, and won the Battle of the Kalka River in 1223 against a coalition of Russian princes. After this, they disappeared back into the steppe, a ghost army that vanished as suddenly as it appeared. Back in the east, resistance continued. The Western Shia had revolted again, and so, in 1226, Genghis Khan personally led a campaign to crush them once and for all. The Mongols captured city after city, and by 1227, the Xia capital had fallen. The dynasty was wiped from history, their name remembered only in ruins. But Genghis Khan would not live to see the final moment of conquest. That year, he died, the exact cause uncertain. Some say he fell from his horse, others suggest illness or assassination. His body was returned to Mongolia and, according to legend, buried in a secret location. Those who escorted his coffin were said to have been killed to preserve the mystery. Even today, his tomb has never been found. By the time of his death, Genghis Khan had created the largest contiguous land empire in human history. He ruled from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. Yet, this was only the beginning. His sons and grandsons would expand the empire even further. As we pause here, picture the Mongol banners rising with the morning sun. Horses stir, campfires smolder. The empire breathes not as a place, but as a force. And as your thoughts begin to slow, feel the rhythm of hooves fading into dream. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, the empire did not collapse, it adapted. The Khan had planned for continuity. He named his third son, Ogedei, as his successor, even during his lifetime. The Mongols valued ability, and Ogedei was known for his level head, generosity, and organizational skill. A great Kurultai was held, and the Mongol princes gathered to affirm Ogedei as the new great Khan. This moment marked a turning point. The Mongol Empire was no longer merely a nomadic confederation, it had become a system of imperial governance. Under Ogedei, the Mongols shifted from conquest to consolidation and expansion. He established a capital city, Karakoram, on the Orkhon River. It was a modest city compared to Chinese or Persian metropolises, but it symbolized a new era. Foreign merchants, ambassadors, craftsmen, and clerics all passed through its gates. Ogedei also implemented a more structured taxation system, relying on administrators recruited from the conquered populations, especially Uyghur Turks, Persians, and Chinese. The empire was learning how to govern not just warriors, but cities, markets, and scholars. With the East relatively secure, the focus turned westward, and so began the most ambitious campaigns yet against the Russian principalities, Eastern Europe, and the Islamic caliphates. In 1236, a massive Mongol army assembled under the leadership of Batu Khan, Genghis's grandson, and the brilliant general Subutai. Their target, the lands of the Kievan Rus, a patchwork of Slavic principalities weakened by internal rivalry. City after city fell: Ryazan, Vladimir, Suzdal, and finally Kiev in 1240. The Mongols showed little mercy to those who resisted. But again, their objective was not blind destruction. They quickly established the Golden Horde, a Mongol state that would rule over parts of Russia for 2 centuries. Then they moved into Hungary and Poland, defeating European knights at the Battle of Mohi and the Battle of Legnica. Europe was shocked their feudal armies were no match for Mongol speed and tactics. Yet, Just as it seemed the Mongols might overrun the continent, they withdrew. Why? In 1241, Kublai Khan died. According to Mongol custom, all major campaigns halted when a great Khan died. The princes and generals had to return for the Kurultai to elect a successor. This moment saved Europe, and it marked the beginning of a new phase, the challenge of unity. Choosing a new great Khan was never simple. Genghis Khan had divided the empire among his sons as Ulis's territories to rule, like appanages, but all were expected to obey the great Khan. Now, with the sons and grandsons of Genghis gaining power and pride, rivalry began to grow. After a delay, Kublai Khan, Ogeday's son, was elected in 1246. His reign was brief, marked by tension with Batu and other princes. Kublai died mysteriously just 2 years later. In the political vacuum, Mongol Khan, a grandson of Genghis through his son Tolui, rose to power in 1251. Mongol's reign would once again unleash Mongol power on the world. He dispatched his brother Hulagu to the Middle East, where he led one of the most fateful campaigns in history. In 1258, the Mongols captured Baghdad, capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, once the heart of Islamic culture and scholarship. The city was devastated. The House of Wisdom, with its vast libraries, was destroyed. It is said the Tigris River ran black with ink and red with blood. The Caliph was killed, an act unthinkable to many Muslims. This event marked the symbolic end of the Islamic Golden Age. And yet, the Mongols did not oppose Islam in principle. Over time, many Mongol rulers would convert. While Hulagu advanced in the Middle East, another of Mongol's brothers, Kublai, campaigned in China. His sights were set on the Yuan Dynasty, the last major Chinese regime not yet under Mongol rule. But just as before, the unexpected changed everything. Mongol died in 1259, triggering a succession crisis. Kublai and his younger brother, Arik Boka, both claimed the title of Great Khan. A civil war followed known as the Toluid Civil War, dividing the empire further. Kublai eventually prevailed in 1264, but the damage was done. The once unified empire now began to fracture into 4 major khanates: the Yuan Dynasty in China, under Kublai Khan, the Ilkhanate in Persia and the Middle East, under Hulagu and his heirs, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Golden Horde in the Russian steppes. Though all nominally recognized the authority of the Great Khan in name, each now pursued its own path. Even so, under Kublai Khan, the Mongol legacy reached new heights. He moved the capital to Dadu, modern Beijing, and officially declared the Yuan Dynasty in 1271. By 1279, the Song Dynasty had fallen, and China was united under Mongol rule for the first time. As we drift through these decades of expansion and division, feel the changing winds of empire. From thundering hooves to scroll-filled libraries, from roaring battles to whispered court intrigues, the Mongols evolved, and so did their world. Now, as your breath settles, imagine the firelight inside a silk-draped tent, maps spread before noble riders, and stars overhead guiding them not just across lands, but across centuries. As we drift into the heart of the 13th century, the world lies blanketed in an unlikely calm. This era, often called the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, may surprise you. For beneath the thunder of conquest and the ash of fallen cities, a new world had begun to take shape. The Mongol Empire, now stretching from the Yellow Sea to the Danube River, was the largest contiguous land empire the world had ever seen. And though it was ruled by warriors, its pulse now beat to the rhythm of trade, law, diplomacy, and ideas. Imagine this: a merchant could travel from Venice to Beijing under a single set of laws, protected by Mongol-issued passports called Paisi golden plaques inscribed with imperial authority. Caravans crossed deserts and mountains with relative safety. Bandits were punished harshly. Roads were repaired. Inns and way stations, called yam, dotted the route, providing shelter and fresh horses. This system formed a massive relay network, the lifeblood of Mongol administration and communication. Messages, goods, and people could move faster across Asia than ever before. The Silk Road, ancient and storied, now gleamed once more with activity. Silks from China, glassware from Syria, gems from India, and furs from the north changed hands in bustling bazaars. But even more important than goods were ideas, philosophies, inventions, and religions flowed freely. In China, under Kublai Khan's Yuan Dynasty, a new blend of cultures emerged. Kublai employed Persian astronomers, Arab mathematicians, and Buddhist monks. He welcomed Marco Polo, the Venetian traveler, whose later writings would enchant Europe with tales of palaces, paper money, and fiery black stone's coal. The Mongols themselves were tolerant of religion. From Nestorian Christianity to Islam, from Buddhism to Taoism, they sought divine favor without enforcing dogma. In fact, many Mongol rulers sponsored interfaith debates. In the courts of Persia or China, you might find an imam, a monk, and a Confucian scholar all in discussion before the Khan. But let's slow down and drift into daily life under Mongol rule. Imagine the streets of Karakoram, now home to Chinese artisans, Muslim architects, and European merchants. In the markets, one hears a dozen languages. Children play beside bronze fountains. Elders drink fermented mare's milk kumis while discussing omens and taxes. In the countryside, nomadic yurts still dot the steppes. The Mongol elite retain their traditional ways, falconry, wrestling, music played on the morang kur, the horsehead fiddle. Their tents are round, warm, and mobile, adorned with rugs and symbolic patterns of strength and harmony. In contrast, urban Mongols adapt to city life. In Beijing, now renamed Dadu, stone walls surround the imperial complex. Kublai builds canals, encourages rice cultivation in the south, and introduces paper currency to stabilize trade. His reign is ambitious. He tries to balance Mongol customs with Chinese statecraft. He adopts Confucian administrators but remains wary of giving them too much influence. Mongols sit at the top of the social hierarchy, followed by Central Asians, then the Han Chinese. Still, Mongol rule is not uniformly harsh. Taxes are fixed, corvée labor is reduced, and peasant land is often protected from seizure. Infrastructure grows, bridges, roads, and granaries are built. In the West, the Ilkhanate in Persia is adapting too. The Mongols learn from Persian bureaucrats, and in time, they convert to Islam. Cities like Tabriz and Baghdad once again flourish as centers of art and astronomy. In the Golden Horde, ruling over Russia, the Mongols adopt Turkic languages and maintain a more decentralized rule. Local princes are allowed to govern as long as they pay tribute. The famed city of Sarai becomes a commercial hub on the Volga River. And in Central Asia, the Chagatai Khanate remains a crossroads linking Persia, India, and China. Here, Mongol customs and Islamic law intermingle in curious harmony. Across the empire, coinage is standardized, weights and measures are regulated, and postal inspectors ensure the yam system runs smoothly. There is a sense, however fragile, that the world is being knit together not just by conquest, but by connection. Still, beneath the surface, pressures begin to rise. The cost of maintaining such a vast empire grows. Factions form, trade routes strain, disease lurks on the horizon. But for now, in this moment, the empire is whole. So let your breath slow. Let the wind of the steppe pass gently through the grass. Hear the low murmur of distant voices in Mongolian, Arabic, Persian, and Chinese sharing stories, bartering silks, debating stars. In this quiet moment of balance, the Mongol Empire does not thunder, it breathes. A bridge between worlds, a pause between storms. As we enter the twilight of the 13th and 14th centuries, the winds of the steppe begin to change. What was once a single, unified empire now starts to fracture. The Mongol Empire, so vast, so swift in its rise, now faces a slow and intricate unraveling. Even as Kublai Khan rules in China, the rest of the empire has begun to drift apart. His cousins in Persia, Central Asia, and Russia no longer take orders from the great Khan. Each Khanate, the Golden Horde, the Ilkhanate, the Chagatai Khanate, and the Yuan Dynasty now moves independently, responding to its own pressures, ambitions, and local cultures. After Kublai's death in 1294, the Yuan Dynasty in China sees a string of weaker successors. Factionalism within the Mongol aristocracy deepens. The bureaucracy becomes bloated, corruption spreads, and natural disasters, floods, famines, and droughts begin to chip away at popular support. In the countryside, Han Chinese peasants grow restless. Secret societies emerge, and by the mid-14th century, the Red Turban Rebellion ignites. In 1368, the Mongols are driven out of China by the Ming Dynasty, and the Yuan retreat to the steppes, ruling a diminished realm in Mongolia proper. To the west, the Ilkhanate collapses in 1335, following the death of Abu Sa'id, the last strong Ilkhan. Without a clear heir, Persia falls into a patchwork of local dynasties. The cultural flowering that had blossomed under Mongol patronage now finds new roots under Persian and Turkic leaders. The Golden Horde continues longer, but suffers from internal disputes, rival claimants, and the devastating effects of plague. The Black Death, which spread along the very trade routes the Mongols had secured, sweeps through Eurasia in the mid-14th century, killing millions and weakening every Khanate. The Chagatai Khanate endures in Central Asia, though it too fractures over time. Out of its ashes will eventually rise a figure who claims descent from both the Mongols and Timurids Babur, founder of the Mughal Empire in India. But let us not mistake decline for disappearance. Though the empire fades, its impact lingers in law, trade, language, and memory. The Mongols introduced the idea of universal rule, a world not divided by ethnicity, but bound by loyalty and tribute. They spread paper currency, diplomatic immunity, and international postal systems. They redrew maps, introduced clocks to China, printing to Persia, and medicines across continents. Cities they once destroyed like Baghdad or Kiev would rebuild. Others they founded, such as Karakoram and Sarai, would decline. Yet the flow of culture and commerce that their empire fostered would continue to ripple through time. In art, the influence is subtle but lasting. Mongol styles, dress, and patterns made their way into Persian miniatures, Chinese pottery, and Russian icons. In language, the Mongols left traces in Turkish, Persian, and Russian vocabularies. Even diplomatic terms like Khanate and Kurultai remain in academic and political discourse. And in collective memory, they occupy a complicated space, part fearsome invader, part cultural bridge. In Russia, the Mongol yoke is seen as both oppression and stabilization. In China, the Yuan dynasty is remembered for both excess and for opening the empire to the wider world. In Central Asia, the Mongol legacy lives on in oral epics, place names, and proud genealogies. Even in the West, the Mongols shaped imagination. Marco Polo's accounts fascinated Europeans for centuries. The idea of a powerful, exotic, and organized East, ruled by khans and emperors, shaped everything from Renaissance cartography to Victorian Orientalism. And what of Genghis Khan? His memory endures not only as a warrior, but as a state builder, a lawgiver, and a unifier of tribes. In Mongolia today, he is revered as a national founder, his image appearing on currency, monuments, and even vodka bottles. Yet his story and the story of the empire he built is not just one of conquest. It is a story of paradox, of brutality and order, destruction and rebirth, isolation and interconnectedness. As we close our eyes, let us picture the steppe once more, endless grasslands under a pale sky. A lone rider moves across the horizon, bearing messages of empire. He carries silk from China, silver from the West, and the seal of the Khan pressed into clay. He rides not for war, but for unity. For a moment in history when the world was tied together not by wire or code, but by horse and flame. Let the clatter of hooves fade into the quiet. Let the echo of yurts, temples, and courts fall away like mist. The story of the Mongol Empire is not over. It lives on in trade, in memory, and in the wind that still sweeps across the steppe. Now, as the stars rise over the ancient lands of Mongolia, rest comes gently. The empire sleeps, and so may you.